All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kirsten Nauman. I'm the Prevention Coordinator for the Town of Trumbull and Teapot Trumbull's Prevention Partnership. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our screening of Screenagers Under the Influence. We're excited to share this film with you because it gives us important, relevant, and accurate information about substance use and other addictive behaviors, and offers suggestions and approaches for how adults can support the young people in our lives to make good decisions and stay safe. After the film, we have a panel of experts available to answer your questions. Our panel includes Melissa McGarry, who's the Prevention Director for the Town of Trumbull and Teapot Trumbull's Prevention Partnership, as well as Dennis McLaughlin, Trumbull High School's Dean of Students. And I also want to welcome Stacy Murphy, the Supervisor of Mental Health for Trumbull Public Schools, who is also with us tonight. As we watch the film, please type any questions that you'll have into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. So if you just give me a minute to share my screen, I will do that. But in the meantime, thank you for being with us tonight, and I will hop on again at the end of the film.
There is no question that our tech revolution has completely shifted our world. The influx of screens into our lives has had its upsides and downsides. For many years now, in my roles as a primary care physician, as a filmmaker, and as a mom, I've been focused on solutions for healthier and more balanced screen time for kids and teens. Recently, talking with teenagers in my clinic, I've had growing concerns about the impact of media on teens' thoughts and decisions when it comes to substances like nicotine, alcohol, weed, and other drugs. And what about the changing landscape of the substances themselves? My kids, who are 2 years apart, are now in college. And even though they're older now, I've been reflecting on all the uncertainties I have felt as a parent navigating the topic of substances. My questions and concerns about these issues are still present. So I'm picking up my camera again, this time to tackle these questions. I really want to understand how we can best empower teens as they face decisions about what they will and will not be influenced by. A few years back, as technology expanded with new apps and more, a new technology hit the market. Vaping nicotine has quickly become something that some teens do. This took off with the e-cigarette brand Juul, and research is now uncovering all sorts of health problems connected to vaping. Yet right now, what I want to understand is what was behind the rapid growth of e-cigarette use among teens.
90% of smokers start before the age of 18. There are very few 40-year-olds that say, hey, I think I'm going to start smoking. Well, the industry knows that. And they want to recruit new people to smoke, and they'd like them to smoke for a long period of time. So they go after teenagers.
Robert Jackler founded a center that has the world's largest collection of tobacco marketing materials.
Here's one I just got the other day. You see? The boy and girl together. Cigarettes are a symbol of their love. I began to collect the advertisements, and pretty soon I'd had tens of thousands, and eventually we have a collection of about 60,000 original tobacco ads. And when I looked at what they did in the 1920s through 1950s, and I look what e-cigarette companies are doing now, I realized, oh my gosh, they're doing the same thing today. As was said in an internal tobacco industry document, get them young, train them right, and then we'll have them for customers for the rest of their life. And that was the philosophy, and they still do that today.
I started vaping about 1 year ago. I would go to a party and I would hit it. It would make me feel really calm. And I liked that feeling of the head high. This is where I was every other week, and this was my flavor of choice, spearmint. This used to be like one of the most beautiful sights at a gas station for me. It tasted great, made you feel amazing in the moment. In school, I would take a bathroom break about every 30 minutes just to go vape. If I was at home at my parents', I would go actually to my bedroom closet, blow the smoke into the closet. Without vaping, I felt restlessness, agitation, couldn't sleep unless I took a hit like 5 times before going to bed. If I went an hour without it, I would get jitters, my whole hands, my whole body would shake. I would have a full reaction without the nicotine. Vaping definitely created anxiety that I didn't have before that. I knew I was so heavily addicted that I couldn't enjoy anything.
We know that teens are attracted to vapes because of the flavors.
Most of the world does not allow flavors in e-cigarettes. Most of the world does not allow super high nicotine.
What nicotine does is it sort of enhances whatever you're feeling at the time. If you're having a good time and you're using nicotine, that can feel like it's reinforcing that good time, and it can be pleasurable. People don't realize that one Juul pod contains the nicotine of a whole pack of cigarettes. So as you're finishing a pod, you might think of that as one unit or one vape, where actually it's like 20 cigarettes. The feeling of nicotine withdrawal ends up increasing anger and anxiety and feeling desperate. Over time, vaping becomes a way just to not feel bad.
This hearing is examining Juul's role in the youth nicotine epidemic today.
In 2019, Congress decided to have a hearing specifically looking at Juul and how it contributed to the epidemic of e-cigarette use in America. From its inception, Juul mostly advertised on social media, especially Instagram.
Jackler spoke at these hearings, and so did James Monsees, one of the 2 co-founders of Juul.
We never wanted any non-nicotine user, and certainly nobody underage, to ever use Juul products.
Early on in his journey to create e-cigarettes, he had come to me to talk about tobacco advertising, to learn about tobacco advertising. He used our advertising database for research, and he told me that. He said, the advertising database you have that you created at Stanford of all these tobacco ads was really helpful to us when we planned how to market Juul.
Monsees was asked about his visit to see Jackler's ad collection.
We were very interested in using his resource to understand exactly what bad actions those tobacco companies have taken, to familiarize ourselves with how not to run a business.
I just laughed when I saw that because it was so ridiculous, because they copied the big tobacco marketing techniques very faithfully. The young people looking super cool. They would pay influencers, and they use organic social media, where the teenagers become members of their marketing crew by saying how much they like it. The reach of that organic social media, those posts, can go out to millions of people. It's like lighting a match to begin a fire.
I couldn't live without it, and I wanted to see if I could. I just pulled my phone out, and it was the first take. I just filmed it. I said, it starts here. This is day 1, and I want to see if I can do this. I have only been vaping for less than a year. I am fully hooked. I think the only way I could hold myself accountable is if I was to make a video and document it. This was my very last vape. I hit it yesterday, so I'm going to document my journey without it. It has been controlling my life ever since I took the first hit. After posting it online, I definitely felt like I needed to continue to track my progress and not cave. Trigger warning, if vomiting disturbs you, don't watch till the end. This is what happened to me day 2. I started getting full body chills out of nowhere, then profusely sweating when I got home. I took a shower, got super nauseous, and I threw up.
Ellie's quitting videos hit a nerve, and more than 60,000 people started following her journey.
Thanks, this was my sign to stop. I appreciate this a lot. Quitting was the best decision I've ever made.
Behavior change is one of the most important yet difficult things to do. But here's what we know in regards to addiction or any addictive habits. Accountability helps folks be motivated and remain motivated to make those changes. We were all designed for connection. When we have that, it actually does keep us motivated to do what we need to do.
So I'm walking about 2 miles every morning. I knew if I didn't quit now, it would be an addiction that could potentially last the rest of my life. I knew I would have my weak moments, but in those weak moments, I would pull out my camera instead. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to keep going.
It's been great to see Ellie using tech to help her, and also to learn about other ways technology is being used to help teens who want to quit. But what about teens who don't want to quit and their parents happen to know they vape?
I think what's hard is when the teenager believes it. No, it helps me. I feel better this way. I'm less anxious. I'm less depressed. I don't argue with them. That's their belief system. If I start arguing as a parent or a psychologist with the kiddo that believes that, where is that going to go?
One of the problems that we see for families coming into the clinic is that the kids feel like all their parents ever want to talk to them about is vaping, that there's no other topic, that they're just like a creature that vapes. And that's a big problem. You're going to set aside a couple of minutes and that's really it. And the rest of the time, you're going to talk about other stuff.
Regarding teens' decisions to start vaping or to quit vaping, I meet with researcher David Yeager. He explains anti-smoking campaigns, first what's not worked, and then what has.
2 key values for adolescents are concerned with social justice and concerned with feeling like an autonomous person. Their first anti-smoking advertisements said things like, think, don't smoke. Think, don't smoke. That's like a bunch of grown-ups telling you you're not thinking, which is insulting. Second of all, telling you what to do. Those tobacco advertisements were running across the airwaves. Turns out that they were causing harm. They were making teenagers want to try smoking more. The Truth campaign was very clever. They didn't tell you what to do. What they said was, there's a reason why people are addicted to smoking. It's because the tobacco companies made it addictive. And there's a reason why kids are smoking. It's because they market it to children. And so they depict thousands of kids outside a high-rise building and telling tobacco executives in the building to take a day off from killing. So it portrays the young people as standing up against that injustice, making non-smoking the high-status thing to be doing.
Researchers found that in its first 4 years, this campaign prevented an estimated 450,000 teens from smoking. Clearly, there's many benefits of teens knowing about the various ways industries work to get their business. So what about alcohol and our technology revolution?
What shows do you guys like watching?
Shows about birds and nature, but also The Mandalorian from Star Wars, and Marvel. A little bit of Marvel.
There's probably not drinking in those.
Just a little bit. There's that one part where Thor was like really addicted. Yeah. When Asgard was destroyed, they went into his apartment and he had like beer bottles everywhere. We also watched Lord of the Rings. They're drinking, I don't know, ale.
Alcohol imagery is abundant in shows and movies, and it does not discriminate by age.
Delicious.
Teens are exposed to drinking all over social media. And the alcohol industry benefits from this free source of advertising every time users share images with friends and followers.
If you ask the question, when is the right time to drink alcohol? There's never a wrong answer. You should drink, when you're happy, you should drink alcohol. When you're sad, you should drink alcohol. When you're stressed, you should drink alcohol. That's the world that kids are living in.
But does seeing people drinking in the media have an impact on teens' behavior in real life?
Maybe if they were kind of showing that they were having a good time, then it would kind of be like, oh, I want to feel that happiness. Let me do that to get that happiness,
I think, it's glorified. And that is what makes people want to join in the action.
Yeah.
In a movie, if the actor makes it look cool, then I would want to drink.
Like, if it's someone that's already, not thinking about drinking or drugs, then they're probably not going to, really have an impact based on a movie.
A study addressed this question by showing young adult males two types of movies, and the researchers made alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks available in a fridge.
You show them a movie where there's a lot of drinking going on in the movie, and you keep track of what they take while they're watching the movie. And then you bring another group of people in, and you show them a movie that doesn't include a lot of alcohol, and you see what they take while they're watching the movie. What that study found is there was a significant difference. The more you have exposure, the more likely you are to engage in drinking.
Another message so prevalent in the media is that tough guys drink.
Mind if we join you?
I was watching so many different shows, and the predominant feeling was that cool guys definitely do not show emotion.
I meet with Elijah, who's 21, to hear about his past experiences.
In high school especially, well, even middle school, I had quite a bit of negative self-talk. Instagram was terrible for my mental health. I compared myself to others. Look at all these people, they can do all this stuff and you can't. And at the time, I was not capable of saying, okay, I'm angry or I'm sad, I'm depressed. I really believed for a long time that the best way to live life was to completely disconnect from your emotions and feel nothing. I started hanging out with a lot of kids who were 18 years old, they're 17 years old. I'm 15. I can hang out with older kids, and with alcohol, they're gonna make me cool. And I can take these feelings of worthlessness and of feeling lesser. I can just negate all of those feelings, forget they exist.
So how to help counter messages around hiding emotions and alcohol? I meet a soccer coach who is part of a growing movement called positive coaching. Unrelated, the players on his team bleached their hair for team spirit, a trend that started with professional soccer players.
I am a PE teacher here at Archie Williams High School. I'm also the boys varsity soccer coach. As a teenager, as an athlete, I was in the middle of a lot of situations and scenarios where substance abuse was pretty prevalent. When boys specifically were under the influence, in their minds, they felt like they were exerting some kind of masculinity. So for me, getting the boys to understand that dynamic and to try to prevent themselves from being a part of that dynamic, I think is important. Positive coaching to me is coaching that focuses on the entire kid.
The agenda is on the board. Think of something that you might want to discuss. If you have something that's working for you or if you're struggling with something.
Sometimes boys don't even realize what they feel because they've been taught to suppress those feelings.
A lot of my stress comes from not wanting to let anyone down.
Raise your hand if you are feeling that stress and that pressure.
You know, a lot of kids feel that I'm under a lot of stress from school, my parents, my grades, my friends.
Last year, I didn't cope with pressure that well.
When you use these substances to cope, it's a really bad mix.
When you're drinking, you're not aware of your surroundings. You kind of lose that sense of cautiousness and you make stupid decisions.
When we feel stressed, that instinct to want to like make the pain go away, whatever you use to cope with that problem, whatever the root of the anxiety is still there.
When you deal with things head on, right, it's more likely that you're going to come to terms with whatever it is that you're feeling. It's more likely that you're going to deal with the problem instead of just sweeping it under the rug because you're getting high or drunk. You know, a lot of kids feel that if they don't engage in this behavior, they'll be ostracized, they'll be isolated, marginalized. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to promote this message that they don't have to engage in any substance abuse or use to be themselves.
Falcons on three. 1, 2, 3, Falcons.
So what conversations about alcohol are happening in homes? When I ask parents and teens what they've talked about already, I tend to get one main answer.
They always made it really clear that like they would be available and like there to like pick up my call and like come pick me up.
I would say the same.
They should call us and we'll come get them no matter where they are.
They said the first thing we should do is call them. And they said that they would drop anything and pick us up from a bad situation.
That's such an important message. And I'm wondering about other topics as well. I meet with Rana, a graduate student who is working on drug and alcohol education, something she became interested in because of her experiences in high school.
When I was a freshman, on social media, I would see older people, the juniors and the seniors. They were at parties and there was alcohol in the photos, and I started to see like this is what partying looks like. For me, when I would drink a lot and I would pass out. I would get sick. I didn't have any other anchor. I wasn't doing well in school. I didn't have sports. It became, okay, if I'm not gonna be the smart girl, if I'm not gonna be the athlete, let me at least be the life of the party. Just keep making the same error over and over again of over-drinking.
Over-drinking. Data shows that when teens drink, they are more likely to binge drink than adults, in part because many teens are seeking the high from alcohol and to feel more socially comfortable. Data also shows that alcohol affects the regions of the brain that regulate self-control to a significantly greater degree in teens than adults. So for teens, it's harder to slow down or stop once alcohol is on board.
It also came with a lot of like lost friendships. I wasn't behaving in a way that I wanted to be perceived. Like, you know, that's not the person I want to put out there.
Teens will often start to come around and share about times when they've done things they've regretted. A teen has tried to hook up with another teen's partner where they've made inappropriate comments to the point of being brash or harsh.
Teens may find themselves in situations where things occur in the context of a physical interaction that they don't feel they've consented to, and that is more likely to occur if they've been drinking. They're more likely to violate someone else's consent, and they're more likely to have their own consent violated.
Talking with parents, they often share their ideas of how to prevent teens from overdrinking. And I uncover 3 things that turn out to be myths. The first is a common notion that in European countries like France, where the legal drinking age is younger and the culture is more permissive, that teens learn to drink more responsibly. But the rate of binge drinking among 15-year-olds is 3 times greater in France than in the US. A second common myth is the idea that students will drink more safely once they get to college if they've already started drinking in high school.
You'll hear this a lot from students. You'll also hear it from parents that, you know, the ones who never drank in high school, they go crazy once they get to college campus and they're the ones who are passing out. But that's not the reality of the gross data. The gross data says that the more you drink in high school, the more likely you are to increase your drinking in college, and the more likely you are to have negative consequences.
The third myth is the idea that if teens are drinking socially, it's safe to drink at home.
So that has been debunked in the literature.
When you put teens together, allowing them to use substances in the house, you can predict that they're going to be binge drinking. And when kids are binge drinking, it's very hard to keep them safe.
I find many studies that back this. One study found that in homes where senior high school girls were allowed to drink with friends, they were more likely to report binge drinking freshman year of college than those who weren't allowed to.
Every year on college campuses, roughly 1,800 people die from some kind of alcohol-related trauma, and 600,000 students experience serious injuries when they've been drinking.
So given these risks and myths, what does this all mean for parenting?
If in a loving way we create appropriate boundaries and have rules, that's a really healthy environment to raise a kid in because kids know what to expect.
I didn't allow the kids to have their friends over to drink or smoke or anything when they were in high school for a number of reasons. One is I didn't want to sanction it, but also I felt like I didn't know what was going on in their friends' families. I didn't know if they had addiction, if the kids were struggling with something. I knew then that there were some correlations with all of that if you had mental health issues, and I didn't want to make those decisions for those kids or those families.
There are many other guardrails and limits a family will want to discuss. But what about beyond the family unit? I learn about one community that's working to decrease the presence of alcohol in kids' events through an ongoing campaign called Raising the Bar.
Little League games, soccer games, homecoming, graduation, birthday parties. We were raising our kids, including in our own home, by the way. Alcohol was involved in almost every one of those events. And it almost became as much about the adults having a party as it was about the 5-year-old having a party. When we are raising our kids in an environment where, red cups are as prevalent, trick-or-treating as orange pumpkin baskets, it seems like maybe we've lost our way a little bit. It's not easy to send an email to your friends saying, just want to let you know this is going to be an alcohol-free event. We really want to model for our kids that this is about them and not about us. Like that, as a parent, that's kind of an awkward email to send to people. We did it, and then the evening was just as wonderful as it would have been, and the adults weren't all walking around with alcohol in their hands.
Parenting around alcohol is tricky. Alcohol is all around, and of course, many parents drink. We want teens to be safe, and yet biologic and social reasons make this much harder. Research has shown that having discussions with teens about many topics related to alcohol and creating limits in homes increases the odds of teens making safer choices. Similar to nicotine and alcohol, images of cannabis online are ubiquitous.
People will literally just post them smoking a joint. You'll see a lot of celebrities.
Instagram, like the Explore page, and there's a shop section. People selling bongs or stuff for marijuana.
Ads for dispensaries.
The cannabis today is completely different from what it was in the past. The original plant had about 2 to 4% THC. Today, the THC in the cannabis consumed recreationally can be anywhere from 16 to 24% THC, and even go up to 80, 90% THC depending on the preparation.
THC is responsible for the thoughts and mood changes that happen with cannabis. Dr. Hurd studies the effect of THC on cells in the front of the brain, specifically what's called the cortical layer. These cells have branches off of them, also called projections, that allow them to connect to other cells to send signals. These connections are essential for things like handling emotions and making decisions. In the teen years, major connections are being formed.
There was a recent study looking at teens about age 14, and they imaged their brains over the years. And 5 years later, when they studied the children, Those who had used cannabis during that time, a significant proportion had cortical thinning as compared to those teens who did not use cannabis.
Cortical thinning happens when cells lose many of their projections that they use to communicate with other cells. As they lose projections, they take up less space, and hence the thinning. In order to eliminate the possibility that something else is responsible for the cortical thinning, Dr. Hurd uses animal models.
So in our animal model, we're able to know exactly their life. We know exactly how much THC they had. We have teen rats exposed to THC every 3 days over their adolescent lifespan.
Later, when the rats reach young adulthood, their cells are analyzed.
Here you can see that normal cortical cells, nice projections. These are projections that then communicate with other cells. This is what it looks like in adult rats. With adolescent THC exposure, you can see the projections are much fewer. They've shrunk. THC and cannabis is doing something. It compromises the development, the normal development of these cells, so they no longer communicate with other cells in the same way that they should. Cortical thinning in teens who have used cannabis, it has a lot of concern. People have linked cortical thinning to mood disorders, psychiatric disorders like depression, cognitive function.
Dr. Moreland Kapuya treats teen patients, and she sees cognitive changes once they've reduced their cannabis use.
I do assessments. I do a what's your cognition before, and that looks at visual spatial, it looks at attention, it looks at your ability to do immediate recall, because I want you to objectively see from the beginning to the end and at intervals in between what the changes actually look like. Then after months of either tapering down significantly or stopping use, you see a different score and it's improved, and folks are like, wow.
Can you get addicted to weed?
Like medically addicted or like mentally addicted?
I don't know the science behind it, but I've heard from my friends that there's no addictive properties in weed.
There's no like addictive stimulant in it medically, I don't think so. At least that's what I hear a lot amongst like us, like kids in our age.
In fact, addiction can happen. And the risk is greater in teens who are facing mental health challenges and start using it, hoping it will be the solution.
The depression started at the beginning of 10th grade. I felt like bleak. I didn't care about my school as much, didn't really care about anything as much. I just didn't want to feel whatever I was feeling. I thought marijuana is getting legalized as medicine, so I'm just taking it into my own hands.
I was in total denial. I imagined this was sort of just normal teenage behavior. Don't be worried about this. This is what teenagers do. And she's so smart, she'll manage it. She'll smoke weed in moderation, and it's all part of growing up.
We were naive about how bad it was.
I was smoking pot every single day. I would hide it all around the house. I'd smoke sometimes in the classroom because you can have the vape pens now. I would do that while I was in the back of the classroom.
With social media, I would surround myself with people who were using the way that I was or worse, and then I didn't really have to look at myself.
I sort of worked it into my head that I cannot manage without being high.
I was always trying to fix things for Jo. So if she was skipping school, I might get a note from her therapist that she needed a mental health day. I might, get up early and make her this huge breakfast before she goes off to school. And then she wasn't even going to school, but I didn't know that. I wanted to protect her from failing and from hurting.
Mom really wanted to make it better. And that just made me feel more and more ashamed because I could see how much it hurt her every time I would come back stoned and lie to her. I got 1 D and everything else was an F.
Tom and I were not eye to eye on how to treat Jo or what she needed, so that put a wedge in our relationship. I think he thought, this is going to heal itself. You know, it's just a phase, and once Joe goes to college, it will be fine. And I felt like, wow, we need to be doing something drastic.
I didn't really appreciate the magnitude or severity of what Joe had been going through.
There is no blood test or brain scan to diagnose addiction. We base our diagnosis on patterns of behavior.
Clinically, we figure out the degree by which a substance is causing problems by asking questions in 4 categories. Risk-taking, such as driving intoxicated on weed or alcohol. Impaired control, like ongoing compulsive thoughts to use. Physical dependence, such as needing more to get the same effect. And social problems, like neglecting responsibilities or impacting relationships. There can be problems in just 1 or 2 of these categories. When there are significant problems in many of these areas, that points to clinical addiction.
This really was a mental health issue, and I think that the addiction was a response to the mental health crisis.
Jo got into a mental health program, and she started going to community support meetings. There's many types, including 12-step programs and others.
I found other people who were in recovery or seeking recovery, and I went into those rooms thinking, like, I just need some help. Can you guys just help me? I really liked it, and I connected to the emotions that people were talking about.
I started discovering networks, particularly on the internet, like other parents going through the same things.
It's been almost 2 years since I've smoked, used, anything. I've met some other students who are in recovery, and we've actually created a group for students in recovery. We are assembling like a resource guide so that when someone's struggling, they can actually know what exists.
When was it, 2-3 months ago? We were in the car, it was a road trip, and you took a phone call from somebody who'd been sober for 1 day. Set up, these are the people you need to talk to, and they're going to be with you here, and they're going to do this. And over the course of like 3 hours, basically changed this person's life. It was just incredible. So that was extraordinary. Yeah. I don't think I'd ever seen anybody do anything like that, and it was amazing.
Why is it that certain substances, including cannabis, can take such a strong hold on people? Science shows that while each substance causes its own pattern of chemicals to be secreted in the brain, they all share one chemical in common: dopamine. This chemical that is in the reward center of the brain signals to our conscious mind via neurons that we find something pleasurable. And this is a critical factor in the risk for addiction. But is it only substances that do this? What about certain activities and their ability to be addictive? It turns out in our technology age, activities are being designed to be increasingly rewarding, and research indeed shows that they can produce high levels of dopamine. I confer with a leading researcher of addiction who's published over 400 scientific papers and is the director of the nation's top addiction research center.
It's not just drugs that can generate this compulsive pattern of intake. It is evident that also certain behaviors can result in compulsions like gambling, social media, or video gaming. These people forgo many of the activities that are necessary for their well-being. The fact that it's a behavior as opposed to a drug should not deter in any way for the recognition of it as an addiction to a behavior that, of course, clearly is very reinforcing.
During like the summer of 8th grade into 9th grade, that was when I really started playing a lot of video games. I would wake up really early to get on the game, and then I would fall asleep really late. I was only getting 5 hours of sleep. I really wanted that feeling of like, winning, like the excitement from getting that. Also the feeling of winning with my friends, hearing them like over the mic, like screaming, you got this, stuff like that. That just made it even better.
Joshua finished 8th grade valedictorian of his class. And now he couldn't focus on an exam or a test or anything like that.
I wasn't even thinking about school. I was just more focused on video games. I was already so behind that there was basically no point in catching up.
He wouldn't get off the game most of the time. Well, I felt like really miserable when he wouldn't talk to me.
If I was playing and I wasn't really supposed to, I would tell my sister Gabby, I would be like, oh, no, just tell them I'm doing something else.
My mom said, what is your brother doing? And I said, he's sleeping or he's reading a book or something. And then she noticed when I started lying.
I was just playing all day, every day. I would always say I would stop and I just never would.
I tried to stop him. There was no getting him away from it. I said, you're lying, you're cheating, you're up all night, you're tired, your grades are falling drastically. He's willing to get in this much trouble over a video game. Isn't that kind of like the definition of addiction?
What I see with behaviors like video games, gambling, social media, is that natural history is identical to the natural history of addiction to drugs and alcohol. Namely, people start out using for typically one of two reasons, either to have fun or to solve a problem. They'll go back to it and they'll continue to use it more frequently over time. Then it's starting to interfere with their lives. They're investing more of their time, money, energy, creativity. And that's true whether they're addicted to cannabis, alcohol, cocaine, or video games.
Over the course of a year, Joshua's mom tried a lot of things to reel back all the video gaming. She started eventually locking the console in a guest room for days at a time. One day it wasn't there, and she noticed a new tablecloth in Joshua's room.
I went over and flipped the tablecloth off, and there goes the video game. And at that point, I proceeded to take the game and smash it with a hammer. It was a matter of attempting to express to him that I think this thing is trying to hurt you, and I'm going to protect you by smashing it with a hammer. So extreme, yes. But I was meeting his extremes.
Losing one's control when we're worried about our kids, that's relatable. Meanwhile, I think about the control that certain activities and substances can have over people. Science has shown one reason has to do with the brain's response to high levels of dopamine. The brain senses this as overload and starts to reduce dopamine's ability to signal pleasure. How? In order to create signals, dopamine needs to be able to attach to cells via receptors. When overloaded, the brain decreases these receptors. And this can last for hours or longer when one isn't doing the activity or taking the substance.
We've essentially entered a dopamine deficit state where we have fewer dopamine receptors. And once we're in that dopamine deficit state, then natural rewards are no longer as rewarding. Oftentimes when teenagers will come in, what I will ask them to do is to engage in a period of abstinence long enough to reset reward pathways in order for them to be able to see the problems associated with their behaviors or drug use. A month of abstinence, sometimes I recommend a week, sometimes even a 24-hour period, especially for digital drugs. Sometimes it's just deleting an app or not to play a certain video game for that period of time. Once they reestablish reward pathways, can enjoy other things, they're able to say, wow, that's surreal that I put so much time, energy, value on that one thing, and I wasn't valuing all these other things in my life.
It was definitely hard to, stop, but I feel like once I took enough time away from it, it kind of just became natural. I didn't really think about it as much. And And then eventually I saw that, this is for the better.
We went back to doing some of the things we did before video games got into our lives. There's cooking, there's soccer.
I feel like it's just better right now for me to not have a console in the house. With everything that I'm trying to do right now. I've been doing lifeguarding now for 2 months. It was like my first job, but I'm really enjoying it so far.
He's able to get his rest. He tells his friends that call too late. What time do you tell them?
Oh, that my bedtime is at 10 o'clock and I can't go to bed any later than that.
I'll be up. And I'm like, Joshua, don't you want to sit and watch television with me?
With my job, once it hits 11 o'clock, I'm exhausted and I need to sleep.
Having a job as a teen, you can discover things about yourself and that you can build an identity that is in a workspace, socially, with other people that you work next to.
Our tech revolution has aided the growth of an incredibly scary new risk.
I was just hearing the other day about how this friend got a text from their neighbors who saw somebody, not a mailman, put something in their mailbox. Sure enough, it was some substance of some sort that her son had gotten off of Snapchat.
Dealers are using social media to show off what they've got.
Drug dealing in today's day and age has gone from brick and mortar buildings onto social media apps like Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, even Twitter. The reason why Snapchat is the most widely used app to do these drug deals is due to the disappearing messages, which drug dealers love. I remember that night a detective came to my home and told me, "Your son died on fentanyl." I did not know anything about fentanyl whatsoever.
This would be how much cocaine somebody would have to ingest to kill them. This is the approximate number of prescription pills one would have to ingest to kill them. Fentanyl? This much fentanyl would kill you and I if we split it.
I think my son that night met the drug dealer on the corner. I believe that he connected with him through Snapchat. My son thought that he was taking an oxycodone pill, but what he was really truly taking was a cloned pill, a fake pill, made of fentanyl and binder, and that's what killed him. The night Daniel died, I think I started advocating that same night. I knew that what had happened was wrong.
We the people deserve justice.
That's part of a social media protest. Parents showing up outside Snapchat headquarters in Santa Monica today. The parents say the Snapchat is not doing enough against drug dealers who they say are using that app to reach children.
We wanted to make sure that we could raise awareness of the nefarious activities that was happening on Snapchat.
These parents, they're pushing for tougher restrictions on Snapchat's app.
We need them to take action, and we need them to take it today.
In many media outlets, a spokesperson from Snapchat said the company is committed to doing their part to fight the national fentanyl poisoning crisis, which includes using cutting-edge technology to help proactively find and shut down drug dealers' accounts.
Some principals have opened up their doors to us, and we have been able to give presentations. I have a stack of letters from students. Here's one. Dear Jaime, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming to our school. One thing that I want from you is that these problems are spreading very quickly, and you have been sharing your story and talking about the importance of being careful. And I'm so grateful that you showed me.
I'm learning about other people, including students, who are spreading awareness about this topic and about the importance of having Narcan available that can help prevent death from fentanyl and other opioids if given in time. So what's happening with schools and education?
The only thing I've heard about vaping in particular, or even weed, is that we shouldn't do it. I've told it like maybe once or twice. Wow, now that I think about it, I never really got any word on that.
I don't remember a single assembly about drug use.
Well, there's this one video. It's like an egg, and there's a pan, and the pan is, this is your brain off drugs. And then the guy, no. The egg is the brain. This is your brain on drugs. And then he splats the egg on the pan. This is your brain on drugs.
Really? People laugh at it now.
I know. Maybe it was in a sarcastic manner, but they showed it to us.
Indeed, many teens tell me that their education around substances has been sparse. Meanwhile, I think about all the ways media is educating them. What they see, are able to look up, getting incorrect and incomplete information. For example, there's lots of media around research being done into medical uses of psychedelics, THC, and CBD. But what about myths and risks from these and other substances? How do we ensure teens have opportunities to discuss and understand these complexities? We know that scare tactics and abstinence-only education have fallen short. I talk with a mom of 3 who I would have thought would be all for teaching abstinence only, but I learned differently.
So this is Will's high school bedroom. His cap and gown is here from Drake High School where he went. Will was a 21-year-old college senior. He had called me on Wednesday just so excited because he and his best friend had started a business and the college had given them an office space to work. And so he called me from that office space just tickled. He was so excited. On that Friday, Will and some friends decided to take mushrooms. Will had a challenging experience. Some people call this a bad trip. He went into a psychosis and his friends became very worried. He got really agitated. He was yelling. Finally, it got to the point where his friends realized it was more than they could handle. They called for help.
And I don't know what to do. Can you please send someone?
Kate, what temperature do you need?
Oh, good idea. 550.
We left Will right before his graduation. And Kate's the age that Will was.
They were so close. It affected her so deeply and profoundly, and she even said, I thought we were going to grow old together. And like she was counting on that.
So I do the work of the foundation here.
Kristen is working to get more comprehensive and realistic education in schools about all drugs, focusing on ensuring teens are as safe as possible, no matter what their choices.
This curriculum teaches the safest thing is to abstain, and delaying, and that's the best option for many reasons. If they choose to try something, it teaches going through a critical thinking process to understand, what does this do to my body? What are the risks? How can I stay safe? What happened with Will, he was able to escalate over a long period of time. So making sure that kids know, as soon as you think you need help, call for it, don't wait. If they call for help for themselves or a friend, that they won't get in trouble. And what happened the night Will died, to me, it's like the warning bells. When we talk about abstinence only, we lose the opportunity. We have nothing to say to those kids who are trying. And to me, it's just not okay. Like, we have to empower those kids to make their own best choices.
Rana, who spoke earlier about her experiences with alcohol, is actually working with Kristen on Safety First. I asked her for another example of what their curriculum teaches.
We're acknowledging people use alcohol and drugs to have fun or to relax or relieve stress, but it also comes with these consequences. We teach students how to respond in case of an alcohol emergency. And so if someone is unconscious, you call 911. And then while you're waiting for the paramedics to arrive onto the scene, you put someone on their side in the recovery position. And the recovery position is essentially a way to position the person in case they vomit while they're unconscious so that they don't choke on their vomit. The type of drug education you do in 9th grade or in 8th grade, which is typically more preventative, should look different by 11th and 12th grade when you're seeing higher rates of use and more experimentation. Like, at that point, telling kids to just not do drugs because drugs are bad doesn't really help them stay safe.
Some schools have interactive classes where older students lead discussions with younger ones.
We're going to talk to you guys about cannabis and a little bit about nicotine and that stuff, but we have a bunch of...
The older students get trained by and work with a teacher throughout the whole process.
Just remember, if you have questions at all, raise your hand, or you can interrupt us, or write down questions that you have during it. A lot really want to know the science, and they want to understand why it's bad for us, and not really this more scare tactics where it's it's bad for you. It just is.
He had been smoking every day right before he went to sleep, and he tried to stop, and he literally couldn't fall asleep. There are some withdrawal symptoms that you can get from smoking weed, definitely.
I felt like this was good because it gave me an idea of what people's personal experiences are instead of just laying out a bunch of facts.
I think it was better when it's a student, so then you feel more safe, or just it's just easier to talk about when it's peers that are near your age.
Another positive change I encounter in many schools is that they're replacing long suspensions with shorter consequences and efforts to help students get on better trajectories through counseling and opportunities like volunteering and new clubs. Things that can help build up self-worth and a sense of belonging. And all this makes me think about the research around shame.
When people feel shame, they feel bad about themselves. I'm a bad person. It is an overwhelming emotion.
We interviewed kids when they were in 5th grade.
We assessed the degree to which they were prone to shame.
We measured the kids again when the kids were 18 years old.
Children in the 5th grade who were especially shame-prone were more likely to use drugs, especially hard drugs. They started substance use earlier.
If a school suspends a kid, what's the message that they're trying to give to the kid? You're not one of us. You go away.
What teenagers hear is, you're saying I'm bad. The behavior is bad. Therein lies the opportunity for increased shame because they believe that you're talking about them. I'm less likely to be able to make a change when you're saying I'm flawed as opposed to my behavior is flawed.
How do we work in homes to help teens feel valued and not shamed?
Here's what we know, that listening certainly is a form of love, and that most teens want to be loved by being listened to. Reflective listening back would be to say, can I repeat back to you what I think I heard, and please correct me if there's anything that feels off. And you literally repeat back what you've heard. And then you say, did I get that right? No, actually, you missed this piece. Can I repeat it back to you again? Okay, sure. Once the emerging adult says to you, you got it. Then you get to say, is there anything in particular that we can be doing together today to support you in getting A, B, C, or D?
When the teenager is in some sort of struggle where they are feeling in trouble, I failed you, I failed myself, I think it's helpful for you to then decide to disclose, it happened to me too, I got in trouble in this way. It's relief that it's not just me. I'm not alone. In fact, even my parent had this kind of problem.
And Kastner adds that it's not about always sharing.
I have a rule of thumb that unless you can think of how it's in their interest to hear that information right now, you might want to stay with private boundaries on that, because often it is used against you with the argument about, well, you did it, so I can do it.
Or maybe the parent didn't try substances. Parents have their own personal stories and their family stories. All this parenting is hard. No parent is exempt from the struggles that can happen in any home. One parent I meet with illustrates this quite well. She's the mom of Elijah, who I spoke with earlier. Rosalind Weissman. She studies and writes about teenagers, and one of her books, Queen Bees and Wannabes, was the basis of the film Mean Girls.
I operate in the world of how to communicate with your child. I felt like, a terrible mother. Sometimes I felt like a fraud because I do this work for a living and I come home and I have a child who's running off the rails with drugs and alcohol. I was scared and nervous and angry. We had so many fights. Sometimes I would just lose it. I started being, in his words, infuriating about it. This is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. My anxiety and my love for him and my annoyance at him too, and my fear, all of these things just all wrap around. My husband and I were disagreeing and trying to figure things out. One of the things he would get really angry about was that we would set rules down and I would forget them. And he would look at me, because United Front, right? So he would look at me like, as we were starting to really falter, that just, not only did it impact our marriage, but of course it impacted how we were as parents. And that was really hard.
Stress levels in families can get so high, and even if no issues are known about, it can be nerve-wracking. As a parent, how to be involved but not intrusive or overbearing?
When there's no reason to be concerned, you take a stance of open attention and presence in your teen's life. When you see warning signs, new struggles in school, grades are dropping, starting to lie to you, they're going out, you don't know where they are, you go to the level of what's called focused attention, asking more questions of your teen, holding more limits, not out of an effort to control that teen, but out of a sense of your duty as a parent. And if things were to escalate from there, then you go into this phase of protective steps where you do whatever you need to do to keep your teen safe.
So how to address the pushing of limits that come with the teen years?
We could picture a situation where a 16-year-old goes out and comes home very, very drunk. It's a privilege to get to go to a party. And with that privilege comes the expectation of a certain degree of responsibility. So then there's the question of, what should the consequence be?
We like to talk about natural consequences or logical consequences. Natural would be if they lose their cleats, 3 times, they're going to pay for it. Often parents know that since the phone is the most sacred, wonderful device in the teenager's life, it's sort of loose logic, just like take that away and that's the best punishment. But it's not very logical. If they've misused the phone, like there's a rule of having it in the bed all night, that they used it, so take the phone. If you just happen to find a pipe, the natural consequence then is to take the pipe.
It is often the case that we extend a privilege to a teenager, they kind of mess it up, we reel them back in for a little while, give them some time to think about it, give them some time to really understand the kind of responsibility we're looking for, and then we give them another chance.
Consequences should be short. They don't learn with long. If you interview a kid in the 3rd week of their grounding, you say, now what were you grounded for? I can't remember. That's usually not a way to learn and not a way to have that good parent-child relationship. I deal with all sorts of parents that are afraid of having consequences. They're just so afraid of their teenager angry at them. They're not going to get to go out next Friday night. They blow up, right? I hate you, you're the meanest dad, you're the meanest mom. These cursing, these horrible cursing. She has the right to her negative emotions. I know it's paradoxical. Parents are thinking, I can't let them get away with this. I never did this with my parents. The research shows the more that you're calm and accepting, and maybe say, I need to take a break, my heart rate's up because you're so upset and I just need a little water on my face. They're less likely to keep up with that dysregulation.
Working to keep our emotions from derailing us as parents, such important work and hard, and that much more so without others.
A lot of problems that many teens have, they can get very stuck because the family is isolated. Parents are reluctant to pull in supporters because it might be that they are ashamed or that they don't want to, what they see, inflict shame on a teenager. And that's where we talk about justified and unjustified shame. This actually isn't something to hide about. Actually coming out of hiding, that can be transformative.
One of the things that I did always with my children, always, was I was constantly looking for credible adults for them that would basically say the same thing that I did, but it wasn't me. I found a man that I was like, oh, you know what? This is the man. And it actually turned out to be my older son's first job.
Yeah. How you doing? Good. I gotta say, this spot is significantly different than the one that I used to work in.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, he was my first boss. When I was 13, I cleaned all the floors, ran the front desk, did all the laundry. That's bad.
When he first started working for me, he didn't know what to do. He had no clue of like working. The phone would ring and you would just stand there and I'd be like, Elijah, phone?
It was really fascinating and opened my mind to a lot of stuff when you would just sit me down and just honestly let me exist in your space and learn from you.
I always wanted to keep you existing. And I was trying to let you know that it's not always good excitement. Like, you know what I mean?
One of the things you helped me with most was redefining my friend groups and figuring out what type of people I wanted to surround myself and what energy I was looking for.
Don't follow those fools.
Yeah. And you brought that conversation into my head and you brought it forth when otherwise I don't think I would have been talking to myself too much about those kinds of ideas.
Man, that's amazing. I think it's been real fun watching you grow up and, you know, you getting taller, more hair. I remember when the facial hair came in. That was the funny. Your mom comes in and she's like, what can you do with that?
Parents often will feel, well, I can't bother that person, or they have too much going on. But almost always, when you reach out to someone, they're falling over themselves to give you that support, and they're so glad that you reached out.
There's no question that helping teens navigate the many complexities that surround substances, including the risks posed by our tech revolution, merits all of us coming together. What I've learned on this journey is helping me have better conversations with my kids as they progress through college. And my journey has revealed many ways we can help support all teens as they navigate these issues. Like how key it is that they have ways to discuss and understand the science and impact of substances, how industries are trying to hook them, and the various influences media can have over people. And it's essential that they have opportunities to build identities in constructive ways, to learn skills to handle the hard emotions that come with life, and opportunities to form positive connections. As adults in their lives, it's critical to find ways to have productive conversations, working to help teens feel understood, and discussing reasons behind limits and safeguards. And if a substance or behavior is causing ongoing problems in their life, it's all about getting a support team in place. What gives me hope is the strength and wisdom I see in teens all the time. And whatever their decisions about what to do or not do, we are here for them, not to shame them, but to help them figure out their best and safest road forward.
And keep on wishing. Remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing.
Okay. Okay, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Melissa? Okay, good. All right, so going to check and see. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but we do have some time, and we do have our panelists, Melissa, Dennis, and Stacy with us. So, all right, we have a question. Are watching videos addictive or mostly games? Melissa, that's probably best directed towards you.
I think it depends, right? I think any behavior that kids do compulsively and it starts substituting other things in their lives. I mean, Stacy, you have the more of the mental health background than I do, but I do think when kids, especially some of these videos that there's an algorithm that's like feeding them more and more and more. So with a teenage brain, it can be quite difficult to step away. And those like natural breaks don't happen anymore like they did when we were kids and you got a commercial break or the show ended. And, now it's, if they're watching, especially I think of like YouTube videos, and those videos just like you tap into an algorithm and it can take you down a rabbit hole of content that you maybe didn't intend to go looking for. So I think anything that hits that dopamine in the brain and triggers it to the point where that's what they're seeking has the potential to be addictive, especially for teenagers. I see Stacy nodding vehemently, so I'm going to invite her.
You said it well, and couldn't agree more that it absolutely can be addicting. Yep.
It's a great question. I think we're all trying to figure out these new, the new things that are out there on our kids' technology.
And for those of you that joined late, it just occurred to me you might not know who these panelists are. So just to reintroduce them, Melissa McGarry is the prevention director for the town of Trumbull. Stacy Murphy is the mental health supervisor for Trumbull Public Schools, and Dennis McLaughlin is the dean of students at Trumbull High.
Dennis, do you want to just maybe, I was thinking like last time we showed this film, there were questions about kind of steps that the high school is taking to intercede when kids might be vaping or using cannabis in the school buildings. So you want to talk about kind of the response to that and some of the steps that you're all taking? You're muted.
I think that we take a two-step approach. We certainly look at consequences on one end, but you also try and do a lot more things restoratively. One of the things the town has done over the last several years is really increase our, I wouldn't say referrals, but we are using our JRB a little bit better. But when kids use in school and they get caught, there is typically a consequence, and then also some restorative where we're trying to make that the wrong that happened right. So I think that we're really trying to look at that two-step approach.
Can you, a JRB is a juvenile review board?
Yep, I'm sorry. For those that don't know the JRB, that's the Juvenile Review Board for the town. And Melissa, Kirsten, and I sit on it sometimes. But basically, we it's in lieu of kids getting arrested and having to deal with the juvenile court system. So oftentimes that they can go to the JRB. In some instances, it's a one-time, like one-shot deal is what they. I hear Officer Duva in my head saying a one-shot deal where they use it, but at the same time, it's so that kids can get some support. The panel that they meet with usually looks at yes, they did something wrong, but how can we support them? And what can we provide in a variety of ways? It could be counseling support. It could be, like if somebody was using a substance, we might try to find out and do some, like an evaluation to see how much they're using and what we can do to try and help. And that sometimes is also through the Trumbull Counseling Center.
Yeah, we can also connect them to positive activities like clubs or jobs or community service. It really does. I think the film talks about, the value of, promoting kids' self-worth and not shaming them. And I think the Juvenile Review Board really acts on that model, which is like, how can we help kids course correct when they do make a mistake and get back on the right path so they're not, pigeonholed in a way that's negative. So I think it's probably one of the best things that we're doing for kids these days. The other thing is that both Kirsten and I are being trained in vaping cessation programs so that we, TPOD will be able to support the schools and offer real science-based cessation programs so we can help kids break the habits that they may have formed when they're using these substances. So it'll be another tool in the toolbox for all of us.
Just a quick note on that, both of those tie so nicely into the restorative piece. And so taking an opportunity when things come up and kids are maybe disclosing or get in trouble for using substances, taking it as an opportunity to really learn and connect with youth and try to figure out how to help them. So it's not about the punitive, but rather the restorative and ways for them to correct their behavior. So both of those tie so nicely into the restorative practices piece.
We're very lucky to have such great staff who are committed to this and have the town and the schools partnering to help these kids. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions coming in. We could certainly, hold back. Melissa and Stacy and Dennis and myself can hold back if there are questions that maybe people don't feel comfortable asking while the rest of us are on. But since I don't see any other questions coming in, I can give you back another 11 minutes of your life that you're going to get back tonight. So thank you all for joining us. I do appreciate it. And I do want to especially thank Stacy and Dennis for joining us as well. And Bill, of course, as always, for being our tech guru tonight for this. So thank you.
Yeah, especially as this was our first time showing this virtually. So we had some kinks to work out. So we appreciate everybody's help.
Yes. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us.